Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. How are you all doing? I hope you all are doing great. I am here again with another interesting video I know you all are going to love. In today's video, we are going to be looking at how China 10-line was rejected by the Philippines. This video sounds interesting to me. But before I proceed with this video, if you're watching me right now, you're new to my platform, you love my reaction videos, you want to see more from the Philippines, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you don't get to miss out each time I bring videos like this your doorstep. So without wasting much of time, guys, let's watch this video to the end to find out why the Philippines reject the 10-line, okay?
From the peaks of the Himalayan mountains to the shoals of the South China Sea, China lays claim to a vast territory, and a new national map produced by Beijing is the latest expansive conception of its borders to outrage its neighbors. The Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, Taiwan, and India, all of which have territorial disputes with China, have objected to the 2023 version of the country's standard map, released on the 28th of August by the Chinese Ministry of Natural Resources. The map includes a U-shaped line that reaffirms Beijing's claims to sovereignty over almost all of the South China Sea, including the West Philippine Sea, a resource-rich and strategically important region through which trillions of dollars in trade flows each year. The line extends into the exclusive economic zones of a number of countries. It also includes the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh and the Aksai Chin, in the Himalayan border, which China controls but India also claims, and the Russian territory of Bolshoi Ussuriski Island. At least 6 neighboring countries have objected to China's new standard national map, which features a 10-line, instead of the previous 9 dashes, used to stake claims on the South China Sea, with an additional dash to the east of Taiwan. The new map repeats the 9-line claims made by China and rejected by the United Nations Law of the Sea Tribunal, while also claiming new territory around Taiwan and to the north of India. China has put 1 new dash in the eastern section of the democratic island of Taiwan. Beijing sees Taiwan as a renegade province subject to reunification. Also, inside this 10-line are the entire Spratly Islands, which include the Kalayaan Island group. More than 400 Filipino civilians, including 70 children, live in the Philippines' westernmost island. The island serves as the seat of the local government of the municipality of Kalayaan in Palawan province. The Philippines already challenged the then 9-line drawn by China before the Permanent Court of Arbitration. The court had invalidated Beijing's sweeping claim. Since maps don't carry independent legal weight under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, China's overriding challenge remains the need to bring its South China Sea claims into conformity with international law. Privately, some Chinese interlocutors are conscious of the incompatibility between China's United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea obligations and a maximalist interpretation of the 9-line as a territorial enclosure. They seek to reassure foreigners that China's claims extend to islands and other land features within the lines, as well as vaguely defined historical rights. Although the disputed islands and rocks in the South China Sea are now receiving unparalleled international judicial scrutiny, China's mapmakers can probably put away their dividers, safe in the knowledge that Beijing's new leadership will preserve the ambiguity about the full extent of their South China Sea claims which the dashed line affords. In July 2016, the UN Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague, based on a case filed by the Philippines, junked China's 9-line claim covering the entire South China Sea, including the West Philippine Sea. China has refused to acknowledge the ruling. The Philippines backed its historical claims from the 17th century map, where the Scarborough Shoal first appeared on maps of Philippine waters in the 1750s. On the night of September 12, 1748, the British East India Company ship Scarborough struck the now famous reef of the same name while on its way from England to China. As a result, the name Scarborough Shoal first appeared on maps of Philippine waters by English cartographers in the 1750s, according to research by a member of the Philippine Map Collectors Society. It also appears in the Murillo Velarde map in his 1749 book under the name Panicot or Scarborough Shoal. Both terms refer to Bajo de Masinloc. Going back to the 17th century, the hydrographical and chorographical chart of the Philippine Islands was one of the first versions of the Philippines map. This magnificent map of the Philippine archipelago, drawn by the Jesuit father Pedro Murillo Velarde and published in Manila in 1734, is the first and most important scientific map of the Philippines. The Philippines was at that time a vital part of the Spanish Empire, and the map shows the maritime routes with captions from Manila to Spain, and to Mexico known as New Spain, and other Spanish territories in the New World. Currently, the Philippines based its claims on the legal victory on the 12th of July 2016, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The arbitral tribunal in the South China Sea arbitration between the Republic of the Philippines versus the People's Republic of China, which issued a unanimous award in the disputed waters in the South China Sea largely favorable to the Philippines, which was rejected by China. The changing dash lines are the basis of China's claim to sovereignty over 90% of the South China Sea. This claim is based on the U-shaped 11-9 dash line etched on a map in the 1940s by a Chinese geographer, then 9 dashed lines in 1952, and currently, the 10 dash line in mid-2023. For long, China has argued that its claim over the South China Sea is historical in nature.
Wow.
Several Chinese analysts and academics contend that the islands of the South China Sea were first discovered by China's Han Dynasty more than 2 millennia ago. Accordingly, Chinese missions in the 3rd century AD to Cambodia made accounts of the Paracels and Spratlys. Then between the 10th and the 14th century, during the period of Song and Yuan dynasties, Chinese accounts show the South China Sea to be within China's national boundaries. Beijing relies on documentary and archaeological evidence, indications of Chinese activity in the SCS spanning thousands of years, to support China's sovereignty claims. At first glance, this proffered evidence may appear to be sufficient proof of China's claims of sovereignty, especially when China's sovereignty is assumed, and evidence is sought to support these claims. However, this historical rights argument has been challenged on several fronts. First, there is scant proof that China has controlled the South China Sea after the mid-17th century. Indeed, after a burst of seafaring exploration during the Ming Dynasty between 1368 to 1644, China's emperors largely shut their empire off from the seas. As a consequence, there is scarce cartographic proof of China's rights over the South China Sea. Most of the land features and islands within the South China Sea are just microscopic bits of earth with little history behind them and basically no civilians living on them. The Chinese claims are mostly based on its historical rights during the Han Dynasty, dating back over 2,000 years ago. In modern history, China backed its sovereignty claim and related rights over this territory in accordance with the 1943 Cairo Declaration and the 1945 Potsdam Proclamation. After World War II, Japan returned to China the Chinese territories it had occupied, including Taiwan and the Penghu Islands, the Chisha Islands, and the Nansha Islands. However, the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea invalidated China's historical claims over the disputed waters of the South China Sea. Therefore, after the entry into force of UNCLOS, the historic rights that might have existed for China within the 9-dash line in areas that would otherwise include the EEZ or the CS of the Philippines were superseded by the Maritime Zones regime created by UNCLOS. That means the pre-existing historic rights no longer exist as they are not compatible with UNCLOS. Accordingly, the tribunal concluded that China's claims were contrary to UNCLOS and exceeded the geographic limits imposed by it. The Philippines National Security Council will publish an updated Philippine map highlighting the country's maritime entitlements as underway in line with the 2016 arbitral ruling and the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The new standard map that will counter China's 10-dash line map is crucial in terms of determining the extent of Philippine territory that is free for safe navigation and implementing environmental protection programs, according to the Armed Forces of the Philippines. The Philippines' 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone west of the archipelago will be called as West Philippine Sea. Beyond the 200 nautical miles, it is still officially referred to as the South China Sea. This is the first time the Philippine government will publish an updated map showing the country's maritime entitlements, 7 years after the United Nations-backed arbitration tribunal ruled some rock features in the Spratlys form part of the Philippines' EEZs. The UN Commission on the Limits of the Continental Shelf earlier also approved the Philippines' application to extend its continental shelf limit beyond 200 nautical miles from the base shorelines east of Luzon Island. The 13 million hectare continental shelf, called Benham Rise by mariners, was renamed Philippine Rise. The Philippines' updated map will have to undergo many layers of approval process to ensure that it is consistent with the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and the Arbitral Award. This landmark ruling invalidated China's expansive claims in the South China Sea, with the arbitral tribunal largely ruling in favor of Manila in its EEZ and continental shelf that are being claimed by Beijing. The tribunal dealt with the question of whether China's claims to historic rights within the 9-line, now 10-line were in conformity with UNCLOS. It was first observed that this area, in which China claimed rights, formed in the long historical course, to living and non-living resources like fisheries and petroleum resources, partially overlaps with areas that would otherwise comprise the exclusive economic zone or the continental shelf of the Philippines. In the view of the tribunal, UNCLOS establishes a comprehensive maritime zones regime and allocates rights in these areas to the coastal state and other states. In the areas of the EEZ and the continental shelf, the coastal state enjoys exclusive sovereign rights to the exploitation of living and non-living natural resources. Concerning the rights of other states in these areas, the tribunal found that UNCLOS does not permit the preservation of the historic rights of any state within the EEZ or the continental shelf of another state. Therefore, after the entry into force of UNCLOS, the historic rights that might have existed for China within the 9-line in areas that would otherwise include the EEZ or the CS of the Philippines were superseded by the maritime zones regime created by UNCLOS. That means the pre-existing historic rights no longer exist as they are not compatible with UNCLOS. Accordingly, the tribunal concluded that China's claims were contrary to UNCLOS and exceeded the geographic limits imposed by it. The award addresses three main substantive issues. First, the so-called 9-line and China's claim to historic rights in the South China Sea. Second, the status of certain maritime features in the South China Sea. And third, the legality of Chinese activities in the South China Sea. Because of jurisdictional limits, however, the arbitral tribunal did not deal with matters related to territorial sovereignty over the disputed maritime features between the parties. That means that the tribunal did not decide who owned the maritime features located in the South China Sea, such as the Spratly Islands, that are claimed by both China and the Philippines or any other coastal state in the region. Similarly, the tribunal did not delimit any maritime boundaries between the Philippines and China in the South China Sea. The tribunal also ruled on the legality of the activities of Chinese officials and Chinese vessels in the areas of the South China Sea located within the Philippines' EEZ and continental shelf. It concluded that China breached the provisions of UNCLOS, in particular by temporarily prohibiting fishing in areas of the South China Sea falling within the Philippines' EEZ. Failing to prevent Chinese vessels from fishing in the Philippines' EEZ at Mischief Reef and Second Thomas Shoal, and preventing Filipino fishermen from engaging in traditional fishing at Scarborough Shoal. Regarding China's construction of artificial islands, installations, and structures at Mischief Reef, an LTE that is part of the Philippines' EEZ and continental shelf, without the authorization of the Philippines, the tribunal also found China to have violated UNCLOS. The tribunal's ruling is certainly a legal victory for the Philippines over China, as the judges agreed unanimously on almost all the questions submitted by the Philippines, including a declaration from the tribunal that China is obliged to comply with UNCLOS and that the award is legally binding on China. Now have China reasserting its position and possibly seeking to expand its position, especially with respect to Taiwan. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said at a regular press briefing on August 30 that China's position on the South China Sea is consistent and clear. The competent authorities of China routinely publish standard maps of various types every year, which aims to make standard maps available to all sectors of society and raise public awareness of the standardized use of maps. It hopes the parties concerned can view it in an objective and rational light. The day before, Wang responded to India's protest in a similar fashion, with a touch more condescension. It hopes relevant sides can stay objective and calm, and refrain from over-interpreting the issue. Southeast Asian reactions to date have been subdued, at least publicly, although the Philippines Department of Foreign Affairs apparently sent a confidential note verbal to the Chinese embassy, protesting against the reference to those dash lines as China's national boundaries. Indonesia's semi-dormant sensitivities in the South China Sea may be pricked by the fact that China's westernmost dash line clearly bisects Indonesia's gas-rich exclusive economic zone off Natuna, potentially reviving concerns that Jakarta believed it had put to bed with bilateral reassurances received in the early 1990s. Thus far, Indonesia hasn't offered any official objection to the new map, perhaps preferring to dwell on the positive fact that China's mapmakers have acknowledged the outer limit of Indonesia's archipelagic waters to the north of Natuna. Yet China shouldn't take Indonesia's neutrality in the South China Sea disputes for granted. In reality, Indonesia's maritime resource equities are potentially on the line, despite not being a claimant to the Spratlys. Jakarta previously queried the legal basis for China's 9-dash claim in 2009 through the UN, while Chinese and Indonesian patrol boats faced off in an incident near Natuna in June 2010. Equally, the PLA Navy's late March 2013 excursion to James Shoal, traditionally regarded as China's southernmost claimed feature in the South China Sea even though it is submerged, ruffled feathers in Kuala Lumpur, which has traditionally felt less threatened by China's claims.